Hey, what's up, everybody? Dirrick Butler here for our first Keeping It 110 episode of the year. I feel like we haven't done this in a really long time, but really excited to be back and to be here to share what we've been working on for the past 10 months. And I thought it'd be really cool for us to be with Mckoy for this episode as we roll out and launch our strategic plan. Y'all, it has been a journey.
It's been some work
making this thing happen, but really excited where we landed and where we're hoping that the organization goes. So I want to introduce y'all to Dom.
Great to be here. I didn't realize this is the first one, so I think I'm honored. I'm honored to actually be able to join. So Dominique Mckoy, Dom, with the 2 and 3 Project at U Chicago, and my other job, I like to say, is getting the opportunity to be board chair for Project OneTen for the past 2 years, and really excited to be able to support and be a part of this conversation. So thanks for inviting me.
Love it. No, of course. Wouldn't have had anyone else here. So yeah, thank you. I mean, Dom, you've been monumental, I think, in just getting our organization to this point. It's so interesting. I feel like me and Dom's paths have connected, I think, in so many places, not even knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, both started out kind of like at the same school, different times, surge. I mean, so what kind of compelled you when I asked, like, yo, Dom, so I'm doing this thing and would love your help. What was like, this is cool, I think I want to join?
I mean, I think, like you said, our paths have been crossing in many ways over the past couple of years, and I think when it comes to Project OneTen, I was always a fan even before I was involved. Right? I got a chance to see some of the conversation when you were just starting out, some of the conversations that you all were driving around the city to really center young men. Center opportunities to make sure that we as adults are finding ways to show up for our young men so that they can really continue to think about their future and craft the futures that they want for themselves. And I feel like that always shined through really clearly since the jump. Right. And so I think after a year or two of watching from afar, I was pretty excited when I got that phone call because I think it was a lot of points of alignment for me, both personally, professionally, to try to figure out an opportunity to get involved. So, I think that was also 2019. I think the summer of 2019 is when I was
first. Right before the world like shut down.
Or actually, or maybe actually it was 2020. I think that was around that time when we were getting involved. So it was also just a tricky time for everyone, for our young people, for the organization, and but was really thankful to get the opportunity to dive in, just get to be a part of a group of educators, folks that were deeply invested in young people, and also who had a deep understanding of, I think, the opportunities and the work to come. So, yeah.
Love it. Yeah. And like I said, I respect Dom in so many ways. I mean, one, he just brings this knowledge of just like the data and, in a way that like I'm still learning. I think a lot of my experience comes from just like being in the classroom and working kind of at, nonprofits. But Dom, I think, has been able to bring and marry the data in a way that has helped us really communicate like why this work is so important. And the impact that it has. And for those that are new to Project OneTen, we've been around for about 5 years, which is crazy to think. I started this in about 2018, 2019, former teacher, and really recognized the need for intentional support for boys of color during the transition from 8th grade to high school, and some really targeted support in that freshman year. So as I was teaching, while my students were like so excited and eager to be in high school and this new space and, be this, independent adult, they ultimately needed a little bit of support, right?
Yeah.
Like they needed somebody who saw them and like could help walk them through what this transition meant, right? That was kind of like the first touch point. Then my work at another nonprofit, College Access Org, I was tasked with answering the question, where are all the Black boys in our program? And I think that is where me and you kind of connected again, as we were working with the To and Through project. And I kind of was reintroduced to the importance of freshman year.
Yeah.
And if we really wanted students to kind of have the skills, resources, and tools to be able to get into college and to have these like successful post-secondary lives, we really needed to shine a light on like how they were starting their high school careers. So from that, it was like, yo, we got to do something. And that was the birth story of Project OneTen. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we've been around about 5 years. Have worked with about 200 students, like since we started.
Beautiful. A
combination of our out of school mentorship program, and then last year we piloted, of course, our in school work, which has been incredible too. So, Dom, like, being kind of on the board and experiencing all that, like how has it been to see the work kind of just evolve year over year, figuring out how do we still remain relevant during COVID? How do we kind of pivot and support students? How has your experience been on the board side?
Yeah, I think, I think a couple things come up for me, right? Fundamentally, I think the thing I've always appreciated about just our team and our effort is that our conversations always come back to what are the best experiences we can provide for our young men. What are the ways that we can show up to make sure that they feel seen? And I think what I always have appreciated is that I think we spend a lot of time thinking about what is the impact of these experiences, right? How are our students perceiving the time that we have with them, and what, how are we being intentional with that time to hope to make sure that it has that lasting impact that we know is so important in this critical transition, right? And so, it's been a wild run. Everyone, we've lived a lot of life in the city, in the world, right? It's been a complicated couple of years, particularly in the space of education and trying to, we don't have the luxury of always kind of, students don't have the luxury of pressing pause on building their future, right? So we have to be adaptive in that way. So, I think, just in these last couple of years, we're also, we've been scrappy. I think we've learned a lot of lessons around how to pivot. Great example, COVID hit in the middle of our first cohort. And I know like a lot of organizations, we were trying to figure out, right, how do we show up for our young people? And so, I think making the pivot to one, obviously, like many people, virtual programming, but I think also the explicit focus that we placed on mental health, right? And trying to create the care packages that we got a chance to deliver to students, got the grants, the mental health grants that were opened up to not just actually young people that we are working with directly that year, but all students, across the city. I think, again, just really trying to make sure that we use that advantage of being new, that we were learning continuously to stay creative and continue to find those ways to show up for young people. So, again, I think what's been really, what I've always appreciated about it is that we've kind of had this North Star. Partly, I'm a little bit biased. My work is, rooted in a lot of the research around what we know about what are the things that can help students to be most successful in their school journeys, right? And so, I think that's the thing that also always appealed to me, right? We were keying in on 9th grade, and there's a really well researched and documented story around the importance of this transition for all young people, right? The 8th to 9th grade transition, we know 9th grade is is the most important year, right? We said a lot in our work. just given that it is incredibly predictive of a lot of longer term outcomes, right? And so just to hit us with a little bit of the data, because I got to do that, right?
I appreciate it.
For folks that don't know, and this is actually something that I think is going to be important for us to talk about today as we think about the strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, a lot of this story about ninth grade is really lived in schools. But, you know, I think just to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? You know, we know that freshman year, right, or freshman on track is a metric that we measure here in Chicago Public Schools. And it primarily means that, you know, students are failing no more than one core course over the course of their freshman year.
Yep.
And this finding came out of the UChicago Consortium on School Research many, many years ago, and it's been fundamental for the ways that we as a school district really think about helping students transition to high school, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason is because it is incredibly predictive of not only high school graduation, but also when we think about, you know, GPAs that students are bringing through ninth grade, it can also be incredibly predictive of the options that are available to students once they leave high school, right? Totally. And so the two things that we get a chance to key in on at Project OneTen, I think it's really helped us keep that North Star, right? Helping our young men make sure that they finish freshman year on track, right? So hitting that metric, but then also more importantly, making sure that we're doing everything we can to help them finish on track with a 3.0 or above, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say, you know, like on track is so important, right? But when we think about it, right, on track is just passing, right?
It's the floor, right?
Like how do we ensure that students have the resources and tools to reach that 3.0? Because one of the things that was so like enlightening for me was, you know, a student who completes their freshman year with a 3.0 GPA is 2.5 times more likely to graduate in 4 years and have the access to the options, right, of college, of whatever they decide to do. So how do we set our students up early to have that 3.0 GPA? I know there's a piece too around, you know, that GPA in freshman year being predictive of kind of what the GPA will look like when they graduate, right?
What we find, you know, when you look at the data, it's just, you know, we think about freshman year as really the time for young people to kind of set the tone for high school.
Exactly.
And what we see is that it's really the ninth grade GPA, all right, what a student ends up with at the end of their ninth grade year, it's really sticky. It's not impossible by any means for a student to kind of get back on track, have that 3.0 by the time they graduate, but it's really hard, right? And it's really hard for a lot of students. And so we see that there's been a lot of intentionality, right, to really kind of have this conversation around how can we help students kind of hit that B's or better threshold, particularly in freshman year, to make sure that they're setting that tone that can carry them through the rest of their high school journey. And I think the important piece of data too, right, when we think about why we exist from particularly an equity perspective and why we work specifically with Black and brown young men, is that, again, when we look across all outcomes, right, these are the students that are, you know, there is the most opportunity to make sure that more of them are graduating high school with a 3.0 or above. Right? Currently, right now, for last class, the class of 2022, right, when we looked across the entire district, we saw about 13% of Black young men graduated high school with a 3.0. We saw about 23% of Latino young men graduate with a 3.0. And I think just those numbers alone really crystallize, right? It is a longer term impact that we're working on, but we're really trying to make sure that we can reach our students at the most critical point of intervention to help them set that tone, to make sure they can get to the end of their high school career, again, with the GPA to make sure that they still have options. You know, we go back and forth, and then we've had a lot of conversations over the years too about, you know, what's the goal, right? And, you know, I know we're both college people. You know, I think we still believe there's a lot of conversation about college and is it worth it? You know, I obviously still deeply believe in the opportunity that college can provide, but it is nuanced, right? And I think it is a wholesale good thing that we have a lot more conversation in the city. But can you actually talk a little bit about just how we've navigated, right? As we've seen the city, you know, expand to have more definitions of post-secondary success, which is a good thing. how have we helped to square that kind of with Project OneTen and our ultimate mission?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the key things that you hit on is this early exposure, right? Like, how do we ensure that like students understand and know the options earlier, so that they know what they are getting, what they're working towards, right? So to your point, right, if it's college, so one of the things that we've done, and we'll talk a little bit about our programming later, but one of the things we've done is bring in facilitators to help students think about what could college look like for them, right? What are the finances attached to it? And how can that impact their long-term life trajectory, right? We also this year are thinking about also how can we expose students earlier to careers and trades that may interest them, right? I feel that if a student knows, okay, I want to be in the finance space, they now are making the decisions in high school that will support that dream. So I need to do this, I need to do that. Like, and I think it impacts their motivation to push through. So that's another piece. And then as well, I think Chicago has done an amazing job of tooling city colleges with a plethora of programs and opportunities that students can tap into. And even with the rise of careers where you need some sort of credential or certificate or whatever, how are we also exposing students and families to those options? So I think we've kind of like settled on this notion of we want students to live a choice-filled life, right? And in order to have a choice-filled life, it still all points back to that 3.0 GPA. To go to the types of colleges that they want to go to be able to tap into the careers and trades that they want to go be a part of, that 3.0 GPA is still pivotal. So that I think is how we've kind of navigated the conversation around what is our goal.
So let's talk a little bit about program.
And
what we do, what we've been doing. And so we can talk a little bit later about where we're going as well. But
totally.
Can you just talk, we've alluded to it a little bit, but can you talk about kind of the two aspects of our programming, both our mentoring model and then also some of our in-school work?
Totally. So, I mean, I think we've done a great job of sharing just like foundationally why our program exists. But how we do it at Project OneTen, over 5 years, I feel like we've gotten it pretty good, right? Like around what we do. One of the things I'm really excited about is we provide every student in our program. So we host an out-of-school mentorship program. And last year, of course, we piloted some in-school support programming as well. So our out-of-school programming, we provide students coaching. So every student in our program receives a success coach or a mentor who is able to walk them through building goals. What is it that you want to achieve? How do you manage time? All the things that like a freshman is really new to, right? And this is someone who honestly becomes like an older, mature friend. So a success coach. They also receive an academic coach. We recognize that like mentors do an amazing job at kind of the social and emotional and tactical pieces of high school, but the academic coach is where we see the most impact, where students are able to work on whatever it is they have that they need support with, tutoring, test prep. Like I was in class today and I was kind of embarrassed to raise my hand. I didn't understand this thing. So they're able to work with an academic coach for an hour every week for their freshman year. And we've been able to see that level of support has really impacted students' ability to develop confidence, that they actually know like what's going on in the classroom. They're bringing homework, preparing for tests. And we've heard from parents that has been a game changer, right? Because unfortunately, the students that we're serving, like, private tutors is not a thing, right? So that has been just like a real joy to be able to provide. The second thing is our research-backed curriculum, right? We convene our students and mentors throughout the year, around topics such as time management, self-care and wellness. As a student, things are getting stressful, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually identify stress, right? And this is top of mind because this is our workshop later this month, right? How do you identify stress? What are the tools and ways that you can kind of de-escalate things, and then give them some tools and resources to tap into. It's always my favorite workshop, exposing them to yoga and meditation and journaling, right? Because these are things that, like, unfortunately aren't really talked about or taught in high school. It's just like, deal with it, right? But really giving students an opportunity to figure out those things and develop practices that will help them be successful.
I think too, it's, one of my favorite things about workshops, is that maybe these are some of the things that do come up in their high school experience, right? But it provides us with a chance to really double down on it, right?
Totally,
and again, we talk a lot, just a lot of like conversation, heard of like the term like third space, right? Like,
exactly.
It's not quite home, and it's not quite work or school, right? For our kids, right? But it's another, this third space, right, is really important for all of us, but also particularly for young people's development, right? And I think what I love is it provides us with this, particularly our monthly workshops, provides us with an intentional opportunity to really be thoughtful, to try to figure out, right? Maybe they've been hearing some of these terms about self-care. Maybe they're talking about mental health, right? But it gives another kind of outside voice to double down on it, and within this community of their peers and a community of supportive adults, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's all, we've both had the opportunity to be mentors, right? And I think that's the, I think what's anybody who does this work knows that is A, hard, B, it's a skill, right? It's something that is developed. It's something that we all, particularly as adults, so you have to really work at and get better at. But, I think, one of my favorite pieces about Project OneTen, particularly from our monthly workshops that we have, is we get to bring back a consistent community, right, of supportive adults. We talk a lot, actually, quick shout out, Search Institute. We talk a lot about developmental relationships. They have a fantastic framework that we've used. I got a chance to actually meet their president last week and tell him this directly, that's been just fundamental for us. So big shout out to the Search Institute. But, we talk about, right, this idea of what is a developmental adult to student relationship, right? And it's ones that challenge growth, ones that share power, that try to create those opportunities for accountability, but also really work to see our students, right? Really make sure that they have somebody consistently that's checking in on them, that was working to get to know what they're interested in, what some of their talents, what some of the things that are tripping them up. And, I think, again, a year is always quick. A year goes so quick, but there's so much opportunity in that time to make sure that we can try to pick what are those 1, 2, 3 things that's going to help me as a student get to that next level. And having that opportunity to have that consistent community of adults that's with them in that journey is something that I've just always really appreciated, getting an opportunity to see it a couple times these past couple of years.
I mean, that's I feel like that's the last piece of the puzzle, the community, right? And I mean, I think even now we've worked with about 4 cohorts now, and that is consistently, as I continue to meet with the students, our alumni, I feel like that's the one thing they talk about. Like they want to come back to that space because they feel seen, they feel affirmed, they feel like we believe in them. And it's a fun space, but we also are pushing and challenging them, right, to reach those goals that they've set out for themselves. And I'm really, really excited to be able to remain in contact with a lot of our students. And, quick plug, my mentee from the first year of the program was valedictorian of his graduating class. And, with no probing at all, he told me that Project OneTen was instrumental in setting the stage for how he engaged throughout the rest of his high school career. And I mean, he's now at NIU, doing an amazing job. So it's really cool, to your point, that year is quick, but when done right, it can truly have an impact on how they engage in the rest of their high school career.
Can I double down on something real quick? Like, what I love about that story, right, is that we were a part of his journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I love here. Right. Is that we got a chance. We were lucky enough to be a part of his story, but we're able to show up in a way that helped him set that foundation.
Yeah.
That he was able to, again, we only have our students in 9th grade, right? But he was able to use that in 10th, 11th, 12th to continue to build upon that foundation that we got to set.
Yep.
And I've always loved particularly the way that we get to talk about that, right? Because our young men are whole people. Right, they're not coming to us empty.
Exactly.
Right,
exactly.
And I think that's always been a foundational thing about Project OneTen. We see that.
Yeah.
We recognize that. We're not filling them up. We're trying to take some of their innate talents, their brilliance, just the curiosity that they have fundamentally, and really just trying to create an intentional space for that to flourish.
Exactly.
Right, and I'm just. This is the first, we've only had one graduating class, but I'm so excited to see to see that continue to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm very honored that he was able to really point to that as being a part of it. Yep. And I love that we get to recognize that we are a part of a part of their journey, and that there's going to be many inputs. Exactly. But we want to make sure that we're doing the most that we can with the time that we have.
Exactly. Yeah. And I talk about this work often as like a marathon, right? Yeah. How you start the race is so important. Yeah. And there are going to be so many other things that happen throughout this race, different organizations, different programs, church, community, right? So we are not wanting to ever be like, we were the thing, right? Like we made this happen, but we were a part of it. And we're able to kind of set the tone for how the student approaches the rest of their high school career. So that has been, I think, like a joy for me to see, even in these 5 years, leading an organization from the ground up is quite tough, and challenging. But moments like that are just like so inspiring, and are like, wow, if we can do this for this group of students, what would happen to our city if we're able to impact more and more students, and really be able to see not only the deepening of the work that we're doing, but also widening the impact across multiple schools here in the city, which really leads us to why this strategic plan
Where we going, Dirrick?
was needed, right? Like we, in these 5 years, were like, we got something here, right? Like we have something. We are still very new and are still trying to tell the impact of our work in a way that is compelling to folks. Qualitatively, we've heard, right, that this work is impactful.
Which matters.
Exactly.
I'm a data person. This is part of our work at 2 and Through, right? Yeah. We need both that quantitative data and we need that qualitative data to have the full picture. So just got to get that out there.
I'm so appreciative of the work of new schools and the investment in kind of being able to develop that. So this past year has been just an amazing time to really think not only about like what we've done, but like where do we want to go? And focusing on building our organization in a way that will kind of help us get there. So we started our strategic plan back in January, I think a bit naively. We were like, yeah, we can do this. Like, this is great. We know we got to do it. Us board members, we're going to come together and like make this thing happen. We're going to get it done by June.
Yeah, right.
We're going to, and as we kind of got in that thing, it was like, okay, this is actually a bit much. But I couple that with, it was a bit much, but I want to say it was the most inspiring and like affirming process that I think I've been a part of thus far in Project OneTen, kind of, right? Like being able to see, one, that like our work is pretty unique.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In our landscape analysis that we did, we were able to look at organizations across the city that serve students that we serve, that have kind of similar goals. But when we look at the specific window of time that we're working with the students, what our focus is, it's like, wow, this is a unique need and a gap that we can uniquely fill.
Again, freshman, this idea of freshman year being important, right? Yeah. Comes from Chicago, right? It's been around for a very long time. But again, what we've seen, and I think this is a good thing in a lot of ways, it's really lived within schools, right? It's something that ninth grade educators, school leaders have really latched onto, but there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to really have more of this conversation outside of schools.
Totally.
Right? And so I think that has always been, part of the opportunity here, particularly again, when we go back to the data, it's really clearly telling us that, there's something about this effort just living in schools for our young men that isn't quite getting us there. Yeah. Right. And so I think, it was really helpful to, I think that's something we always kind of had in our gut, but do that official check, and really try to see the opportunity that exists in the city.
Love it. Yeah, totally. And and in that process, I said it was super enlightening. And from the data we got from that landscape analysis, our interviews, our surveys, we were able to pull together our 4 priorities, right? What are the things that we want to focus on in the next 3 years that will help Project OneTen get to the place that we want it to be? Mm-hmm. I have this, big goal, in the next, 2034, that we would have worked and impacted, over 1,000 students in our city with a combination, right, of our out of school program and our in school programming. And to be able to do that, we got to make some big investments in how we do the work. So our 4 priorities that we've identified is 1, amplifying our why. Yep. As you talked about earlier, right? Freshmen on track, freshman support has really lived in schools, right? Mm-hmm. And as an organization, in having conversations with people, we realized that a lot of people don't know why freshman year is so important. Yeah. Everyone is focused on, college access, which is equally important. Mm-hmm. But in order for us to get there, we've got to shine the light on this transition and making sure that students kind of start their high school career strong. So we really want to be able to make a significant investment in us being able to tell our story. Yeah. Why is our work important? How are we taking this data from the To and Through Project and other organizations to be able to say, this is why it's important, and then coupling that with our impact data. Yep. And here's what we've seen through our work. So that's what we are hoping to kind of really amplify our why and our story and our impact. And once we get this amazing evaluation strategy and plan done, I'm excited to be able to kind of share that story with people on why our work is so important.
I think the other opportunity that's really stuck out to me in kind of the focus area around amplifying our why, right, is also sharing our learning. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, this is there aren't a lot of spaces. There are a lot of spaces, I think, for young men in a lot of different ways. But I think this specific focus on really trying to attach this to ninth grade and this transition provides us with a lot of opportunity to learn. Right. And I think it's learning that, I think we're already we're finding those opportunities for partnership. Right. To share some of those learnings with other organizations that may not be working with the same young men at this time period, but they're going to be working with our young men at some point in their journey, right? Totally. And so I think continuing to kind of, develop that practice knowledge, right? Turn that back around for the greater Chicago community is also part of, I think something that we do really well in Chicago, right? Learning from each other, collaboration. I'm excited for us to play a part of this ecosystem that we're actually pretty lucky to be a part of here in the city.
Totally. And I think that kind of funnels perfectly into one of our kind of focus areas around broadening our network, right? Not only in programmatically, but also to your point, right? How are we sharing what we learn? How are we learning from other people and kind of just broadening our network here in the city? And that really stemmed from our growing number of alumni that we have in our program, right? We hear time and time again from parents like, oh my God, this was so great, but like, what are the other things that like I can keep my student in that will keep him motivated, that will keep him connected, that will keep him inspired, which is really telling about the space that we've created. So really wanting to build some intentional partnerships, right? We work with the student for a year. How are we creating a pipeline of programs that students can continue to participate in throughout high school? How are we thinking differently about what our mentorship model looks like? So maybe the mentor sticks with them, right? Like, I don't know, right? But like thinking around how do we support our alumni so that like we're able to know when, you know, senior year comes, you know, this student was able to achieve this. They made this, they were a part of this club, this organization, and they're graduating and now going on to whatever it is that they're doing, right? So really broadening our network in that way, as well as really broadening our network with everyday Chicagoans, right? One of the things that I'm really, really excited about is even in our 5 years of work, we've been able to activate and to engage over 3,000 everyday Chicagoans in our work, right? And we recognize that mentorship is hard. It is time consuming, and it will have you thinking like, wow, I thought I was like kind of cool, but like
very humbling, very humbling, as exactly. It should be. Takes you down a peg, but that's all good.
So how do we get these folks that we're talking to every day engaged in our work to be able to support our students as we're growing our numbers? So that's something that I'm really, really excited about, is getting other folks engaged in our work. Because as we said, we know we can't do it all. But how do we kind of pull together a coalition of folks that will be able to create this kind of pipeline to high school graduation?
So I messed this up. I took us out of order. So we,
no, you know,
good. My bad. I'm apologize. But
so
we had focus area number 1, amplifying our why. We talked about focus area 3, broadening our network. You want to take us back to focus area 2?
Focus area 2.
I'm messing up. I'm joining in and just messing up the whole order.
You know, I mean, that's good. That means we're grooving here. We're excited.
I like it.
But 2 is scaling high quality programming, right? I'm really excited to share that we are in the process of hiring our very first program director. And, you know, I'm really excited for this person to come on and be able to take our programming to the next level, right? Being able to have that day-to-day engagement, strengthening our community, filling in gaps, and really being able to track the impact of our work, so that when we are scaling every year, you know, we're not losing our juice, right? You know, it's and that's one of the scary things I think about like growing programs is you're growing in numbers, but oftentimes you're kind of losing the thing that like got you to where you are. So we're trying to be very intentional about making sure that we don't lose it, right? We don't begin to kind of mission creep or you know, we will definitely think differently about the work. But our work is so important in this 9th grade year, and want to make sure that it is remaining at a high quality.
And a lot of us, you know, we've you know, a lot of the board members, we've experienced this, right? And scale is hard, and it will present challenges. There will be trade-offs, right? But I've really appreciated this process, both just personally and as a board member, because I think it's really helped us key in, right, and really double down, right, on what is core for this program. And you know, I think the things that, you know, while we do think about this scale component, you know, again, recognizing when we have the opportunity to work with our young men, really trying to double down on that, doubling down on some of these indicators that we know can really influence success, like on track, like GPA. And again, just retaining this fundamental focus on relationships, right? Which, again, as you talked about, will continue to grow and evolve, but really trying to make sure that that component is showing up consistently for our young men, I think is the opportunity. I also think a lot about, you know, like you said, we got something here, right? We got something good. There is so much good work happening around the city within schools around supporting Black and brown boys in this time period. That I think just getting the opportunity to connect directly with school leaders, with educators, that I know, sometimes our challenge is just getting the word out. But once folks know about our programming, right, everyone's very excited, right? Because they are looking for continued support. They understand the necessity of having these when we talk about wraparound supports, right, that has to exist not only in school, but also it's existing at home. And again, existing, trying to find that time in between, right? And so I think just getting the opportunity to really connect directly with more educators in ninth grade, high schools, and again, continuing to think about how we are helping students prepare for this transition as well in the eighth grade year.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is key in order to kind of grow our programming. It's engaging educators and school leaders around identifying the students that need to be in our program, right? And I think as we are growing, we're being very intentional about like what our ground game is around building coalitions of schools on the south and west sides that are like, we know this program is needed. How can we get our students connected to it?
Can you actually touch on that a little bit? I think it's important. Like when you think about who is a Project OneTen student?
Yeah. I mean, our students, I think, are, as we've gotten much clearer on this, it honestly reminds me of myself when I was in high school, right? It was a student who, like, is, goodness, I'm trying to think, right? Like, it's a student who is mid-tier, right? Not like super, not needing like super academic support, right? But needs that space for someone to kind of like see them, to tap into like what their like genius is, and be able to create a space for it, right? It's a student who like is, excited about high school, but may oftentimes kind of like feel a little bit like out of place, and need someone to kind of help develop that confidence. And with the right guidance, mentorship, and coaching, can be like this stellar student, right?
And I would even argue, like, and I've seen the young men who've come through our program, like, they are just kind of your typical high school boy, right? And it's not our students that are maybe the high flyers or academically, or have really found their footing in school, and it's not our students that are really completely disconnected from school, right? But they are just young people being young people, right? And still figuring it out, right? And I think fundamentally, like, anybody who's worked with high school students, right, kind of knows this, particularly ninth graders, right? I love it. It is a amazing and also hilarious year, because there's just so much change, right? There's so much going on, like developmentally, neurologically, socially, emotionally, physically. One of the funniest things, this always cracks me up. This was, I remember we took this picture the first year, last year's cohort. It was we took a picture at camp. And this was in August. Just for a little bit of background, key part of the component of our programming is that we, at the beginning of the year, for our students in our cohort for the mentoring program, we take them out of the city and we have an overnight experience at a local kind of campground. It's a fantastic way to just kind of kick off and start to build relationships. But the best part about it, right? We take this picture at the end of the camp experience. And it is, you look at it, it's like, we had about 25 guys. They're like just all arms and limbs, like all gangly, like all over each other, like pushing each other, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like seeing that picture a couple weeks before our end of the year kind of graduation ceremony, right? And I was looking and like, just like, physically, we had guys that had grown like 6 inches. We had guys that were losing their little baby weight, right? You started to see over the course of the year, right? Usually our first workshop, fundamentally, again, these are 14-year-old boys, right? It's silent. Yeah, no, but, right? And you, over the course of the year, you start to see it come out. You start to see those personalities come out, right? And again, I think it just really underscores, right? We didn't build those. Those were in there all the time.
Totally.
But they were in a space where they felt comfortable enough to start letting that out. And I think it really is a beautiful thing to see. They really are developing into young men in real time. And so I think there's just I'm incredibly excited about that opportunity to continue to expand that, right? Make sure that we're building that speed, providing more young people with the opportunity to really have another space where they truly feel seen.
Yeah, definitely.
And take more of those pictures because they're honestly, it's like hilarious. It's like the ultimate glow up, right? Like it's great.
It really is. And I think to that point, right, it's also just interesting to create a space for, I think, students that are often overlooked, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of like work and programming for, like, to your point, like, your high flying, like academically ambitious, whatever, students, right? And then programs that are like your intervention to bring students kind of like back to school, like get them more engaged, right? And there's this gap of like students that are like, well, there's like,
what are we doing for a regular kid, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is our demographic, the students that we work with every year. And to that point, there's one student, I love him to death, Adam. Every time he comes back he always comes to our welcome dinner. And his mom always tells me, make sure he like speaks. And I always call him up. I'm like, yo, Adam, come up here and tell a little bit about your experience. And she even talks about like how the program like really just helped him come out of his shell to be able to talk about his experience, what he's feeling, how it impacted him. Because before he was just like, I'm good.
I've seen Adam speak a couple times over the years, and not surprisingly, every year it's getting better. Right?
Exactly. I mean, talk about just a natural leader. Like, I love it. It's really cool to see that, and really excited to be able to expand that to more and more students over the years.
And last point on this, again, like part of this work and part of something that I love about this work, right, is I think continuing to help more people see what we fundamentally know, right, is that, sometimes I think there's this narrative that exists about that our young men, right, they're quiet, not talking, they're not engaging. And I think there's this really important question of like, did we ask?
Yeah.
Did we ask a question? Right? Or did we engage in a way that they're either used to be engaging or want to be engaged, right? Or, maybe you did ask the question the first time. Did you follow up? Did you prove? Did you, show this young man that you are truly interested in it? And I think that one of the opportunities that I think we miss in the hustle and bustle of just working to educate students sometimes, particularly young men, like, do we take enough time to really show them that we care? Right. Yeah. And really make sure that we're asking the question. So, but on that note, taking us home, focus area number 4.
Last and final one is strengthening our internal team for growth. When I think about these 5 years, it's been me. Last year we brought on some part-time folks to really help program operations and manage kind of our volunteer mentors. Everyone's always like, who does this? Like, I do
mostly
that. Like,
mostly
who does that? Me. So I am excited to be able to develop and bring on a team to really like think through these like deep questions of, where does our program shift? Where do we go? Where do we move? Experts to support with these things. So over the course of, I believe, year 1 of our strategic plan to year 3, our hope is to have a team of about 4 full-time folks and about 5 part-time people to kind of support the operation of our program, from fundraising to program development and facilitation to kind of internal operations, shout out to our accountant, right? Like all these things are all puzzle pieces to ensuring that like our students get the most wonderful experience in our program. And I think that's something that's like so important to me. It's just being able to offer excellence to our families, to our students, and a space where at the end of the day, they feel seen and feel loved.
And to do that, we have to have a healthy organization. Right?
Exactly.
And just for the record too, so the people know, because Dirrick is one of the most like humble people, and he will not say this, right? Just so we're clear, right? For the first 3 years, you were building this organization essentially as a volunteer, right? Yeah. And I think when you, from a board perspective, I know we've all felt when you took the leap, right, to make this your full-time job, right? Again, you know, and sacrifices that you made, because we are a growing organization, we're working on it, but yes. But I think already, I think we could just, I'll speak from my own perspective, right? It just fundamentally unlocked a level of engagement and intentionality that we were able to create with you having your full-time attention on this. Totally. And I think that's part of what we're just so excited about for this next phase of growth of getting you some more support. We've been able to add some of that part-time support, adding on more of that full-time support. I think it's just, again, I'm incredibly excited to see what that can unlock for these next 3 years.
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm really excited about that. It's just all, every now and then I just kind of sit back as we're talking, just like, wow, this was just a little idea in the back of my head one day, lived in the notes section of my phone, and to see like where we've grown over the past 5 years and where we're looking to go over the next 3. And I think it was important for us to do 3 years as opposed to 5, because so much can change in 3 years as a new org. So really kind of focusing intentionally on these 3 years. But I think it's important to say that like, we can't do this by ourselves, right? Yeah. It is going to take folks like y'all watching, getting connected, plugging in, and supporting the work that we are doing to create safe and intentional spaces for boys of color in our city, specifically during that critical transition to high school. And it's going to take everyday Chicagoans tapping in, right? And getting engaged. And there's many ways, right? We talked a little bit about becoming a mentor, right? I think that is the most impactful, right? Being engaged in programming, supporting a young person, and really getting in there has been, I think, just so impactful for me, right? And it's different being a teacher and then being a mentor, because it's like, I'm just there kind of being a big brother, a friend, right? As opposed to a teacher that's like, but it has been, I think, just really inspirational for me growing the org. And it was important to like see it from that side early on, right? So we recruit for mentors at the top of 2024. So if this is something that maybe you're like interested in getting involved in, like we would love to have you. My always plug too, right, is that again, this is the skill, right? I think one thing that I've really appreciated is the time that we've invested in helping people develop that skill. Yeah. So it's not just being thrown in. We have trainings. We are we try to find time to create collaborative conversations among other mentors to understand what's working, what's not, share strategies. We also solicit feedback from students, which is something I really appreciate, to give the opportunity for them to provide that direct feedback too. So just like our students, our mentors are not doing this alone as well. We talk a lot, again, back to ways to contribute to this effort. We talk a lot about the three T's that I love, right? Time, talent, treasure, right? So donating some of that time through mentoring. Talent. If this work speaks to you, if you are involved in supporting young men, maybe in another way, opportunities for collaboration. You're always looking for spaces to host our students in our workshops. Other opportunities to help our young men experience the beautiful and vibrant city that we live in, right? We know the importance of getting an opportunity to get young people, just make sure that they have access to all of this that I think that we get. And I think that, as a young org, right, we don't have a space, right? So it's really, we rely on our partners to provide that space. But it's also, I think, a gift, right? And it's something that's important to me, is to ensure that our students, to your point, are exposed to the vastness of our city,
Yes.
right? So many, I remember when I was teaching, so many of my students had never been downtown or had never been north side, been to like just the spaces that are here a few minutes away from their homes, right?
And our city sends too many signals to our young men that is not their space when they are citizens of this city. Downtown is theirs as well. And so we want to make sure that we are supporting that and make sure they see it.
And that's why it's so important for us to host these workshops around our city, right? Different locations, different neighborhoods, you know, just so that they can know that this city is theirs too. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
And talk about this third T, Dirrick, because I think that is also a very important one.
Very important. Treasure. We, as a growing organization, right, we rely heavily on donations of folks just like you, right? Giving to investing in planting a seed in this vision for Black and brown boys in our city. Later this month, we're going to be kicking off our end of year giving campaign. This year, it's called It All Starts Here. I'm really excited. This is our new program kind of slogan, right? We started it with leaders are built, not born, Love right? And now we're shifting to this notion of it all starts here, which is really built off of this foundation of all the data that we've talked about today. So planting a seed is so important. If you want to give to our work, you can go to give.project110.org and make a donation today. We would love if you can make monthly contributions to our work, donations of any size. We know that a lot of you also, your companies match donations as well. So even getting your companies involved, right? Is super beneficial to our ability to grow our program year over year. So if our work is speaking to you in any of those three ways, we would love for you to get connected to our work. And then the last one, I don't know what T this is, but share, right? Sharing this work, right? You know, a post on LinkedIn goes a long way, right?
Help us tell a story.
Helping us tell our story and amplifying our why, right? So I'm so inspired by where we are and where we are growing to and the amount of students that are going to be impacted by the work that we're designing. And it's really undergirded by this notion is that they deserve it.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I did not say on behalf of the board, just thank you to you. And so the work that you put in, again, I think one of the, my favorite parts of our evolution of a board, right, is that this started as your thing, right? This was your idea, this was your vision, but this has grown to exist beyond that, right? To something that we all share, that we are all invested in. And this is part of the work that we're getting an opportunity to do is make this all of our work, right? And so I think first and foremost, thank you for your humility in sharing and being open to letting other people impact this work that also care. I think it's part of one of my favorite things of working with you is that you are open to that feedback and that collaboration. But also just thank you for your investment of time and care in young people that we get a chance to work with. So couple other, and just quickly, I think other couple of quick thank yous like this, as you mentioned, has been a tremendous effort to really put together this strategic plan. And so, I think want to fundamentally thank our board members that also helped lead this project. We had a numerous amount of colleagues that supported us in this work. Huge shout out to the Surge Institute, where I think our Surge family that's wrapped around us to help us. Many of those colleagues came through that important connection and that movement that's being built there.
Michelle, Alberto, Grisel, I mean, like, amazing support.
Thank you all for showing up for us.
Really, really appreciate it. I mean, the work of New Schools has been just monumental in supporting this work. My friend Jill, who helped us with our landscape analysis, Dr. Kathleen Hayes, who helped kind of create the data report.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally was a labor of love.
We got a village. You know, it takes a village, and we're building the village. And so thank you.
Yeah.
And I think just last, I just want to make sure that we are also just thanking our families and our young men that have gone on this journey with us, particularly for our parents who every year hear about this. What is this program that y'all want to do with my guy?
Right.
And having that faith and willingness to partner with us in support of their young people. And then fundamentally just our guys, continuing to show up. It is a true honor to be a part of their journey, and just so thankful that we get an opportunity to do this work. Yeah,
I agree. It has been awesome. Well, man, thank you.
Let's let these people go home. I know
I really appreciate your time. Yeah. I mean, I'm leaving this conversation just so inspired and motivated and ready to take this to the next level. After a little vacation, it is time.
That's right.
But I'm excited for this next phase, and really excited to get y'all plugged into our work. Visit our website at www.project110.org to learn all about our programs, our impact, and how you can get engaged in the work that we are doing here in Chicago. Thanks so much, Dom.
Absolutely.
Have a great rest of y'all's day.